But once you start to look at reconciliation, that's bringing back, you know what I'm saying? Even linguistically, when you deal with the Greek, it still literally means to reconcile, make one again. And the Gentiles were never one with God. You know what I'm saying? The only way there, typically, once you get to Israel's time, is, coming up and coming near to him through Israel. You look at Amos 3:1, he says, for you other nations, I never knew you. It's only you that I've known out of all the nations of the earth. Therefore, I'll punish you for your iniquities. So my question would be, when were the other nations ever near unto God to where he's reconciling them?
So Paul then moves to talking about a greater reconciliation, right? And in that reconciliation, Christ is reconciling all things back unto himself, right? Colossians 1:20 teaches that. So when we start to talk about this idea of when were nations ever with God, well, they were always with God. They started with God. This is literally what begins to take place. This is what the Tower of Babel situation is in Genesis chapter 10. All the nations are together, undivided, right? And then Genesis chapter 11, there's the division of all of the nations. So all of the nations become divided. So they were all with God. All the nations started with God. Then, because of their sin and them trying to build zygites and everything like that, and essentially worship false deities, God dispersed all of the nations. He separated them by tongues. He did all of that. So all of the nations became separate from him. Then Genesis chapter 12 comes into play. That's a big picture here. Then Genesis chapter 12 comes into play. Right after he disperses all of the nations to be separate, Genesis 12 comes into place, and he calls Abraham. And this is now when Deuteronomy 32 is telling us what happened. And so he chooses Israel for himself, but he has to start them as a nation. And so he calls Abraham out of the Ur Chaldeans now, and he tells him, I'm going to make you a great nation. You'll be the father of many. I'll be the father of many nations and things like that. As you keep walking down and through the story, you get the Israelites going to captivity. They're in Egypt. And then what happens in Exodus chapter 19? He literally says to them that they will be his light into who? The nations. So Israel is Israel. There's no division of nations at this time, right? There is no southern and northern kingdom. They haven't been divided by sin. They just come out of captivity. And in Exodus 19, he says to them, I just start at verse 4, he says, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you should be my own possession amongst all the people. For all the earth is mine. So everybody is mine. You're my own possession amongst all the people, or out of all the people. For all of the earth is mine. All of these people belong to me, right? But you're going to be my own possession. Why? And you shall be a kingdom. I'm in verse 6. And you should be a king. You should be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel. And when you look at this idea of them being a kingdom of priests, what is the point of them being a kingdom of priests? Peter goes on and he elaborates that this kingdom of priests, or this holy priesthood, has the job of do what? To draw the nations out of darkness and into his marvelous light. These priests were mediators between God and the nations, right? You're my own possession. Now you're supposed to be a light unto the nations, mediating between myself and the nations. And so when we ask, when was the nations ever the Lord's? When he created them. When he created them. When he said by Christ all things were made and nothing had been made that was not. He created all people. And until he divided the nations up in Genesis chapter 10 and 11, they were all one people. And now what does God always desire? The big picture. He wants to bring all of the people back into his household, back into relationship with him now. And so I'll just stop there. I don't want to go too long.